Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Trenches with Gang Green. I'm your host, Bubbs. Today is Tuesday, October 8th, and we've got some major breaking New York Jets news as a couple hours ago, Woody Johnson and the New York Jets fired head coach Robert Saleh this morning. And we are going to break it all down in today's episode. This is episode 400. Talk about starting the 400 episodes with a bang. Episode 400, talking Robert Saleh getting fired, breaking New York Jets news a little while ago. Let's break down all angles of this one today on the podcast. Let's not waste any time. I will say this. This is shocking. I am surprised. I talked about it yesterday after the Vikings loss. Of course, we talked about it in the recap pod, but then yesterday, kind of the day after pod, with some of my more takeaways from the loss and all that stuff, and just my more thoughts on where the coaching staff stood. The team, of course, being at 2-3. I said I would fire him after that Minnesota game. I wouldn't have let him get on that plane. I would have also made a change at offensive coordinator on the offensive staff. I would have fired Nathaniel Hackett. I would have made major changes after what was another disgusting Jets loss in London. And why I'm so surprised, why I think we are so surprised is, number one, Woody Johnson doesn't do this. But number two, it's coming on a Tuesday. You think if they would fire him, you would think it would have happened yesterday morning. Instead, it comes in here on a Tuesday. Saleh spoke to the media yesterday as if everything was normal, business as usual. They were going to go about their business, planning for Buffalo here coming up on Monday night at MetLife Stadium, and that doesn't happen. So this is surprising. This is shocking. I always say it in sports. Anytime a coach gets fired, a player gets traded, no matter if you're expecting it or not, there's always that initial shock, that initial kind of stunned type of you where you just don't really know how to react in a way. And look, this needed to be done. This had to be done. We'll break down all angles, but just open there. I'm shocked. I'm surprised. I thought that the New York Jets and Woody Johnson, number one, if you would have told me were they going to fire Saleh, I probably would have guessed that they wouldn't even have fired Saleh, because Woody just doesn't do that. That's not what this organization does, is fire coaches and make changes middle of the year. But obviously you're in an all-in year with Aaron Rodgers. This needed to be done. You're 2-3. You're well below expectations. You're not playing anywhere to where this team's caliber and to where this team's play should be. Something had to be done, and that's what happens here. And you don't even wait until Monday night, which I think they had to do, and that's why I do agree with this move. You couldn't wait till Monday night, get blown out of your own building, and then say 2-4. We got a loss now in the division. Now we're 2 games back of Buffalo, and sit there and say, okay, now the time is to fire him. That was too late. It had to be done now, and they make that move now. And there might be some more. There's other moves potentially coming here. Hackett looks like he's safe for now. It looks like other coaches are safe. Jeff Ulbrich takes over, but this had to be done. No other way to put it. Now, I want to break this down step by step, give you thoughts on Saleh, his tenure, where this team stands, Jeff Ulbrich, all that stuff. But here was the statement from Woody Johnson that was sent out a little while ago in regards to the New York Jets coaching change. It says, this morning I informed Robert Saleh that he will no longer serve as the head coach of the Jets. I thanked him for his hard work these past 3.5 years, and I wished him and his family well moving forward. This was not an easy decision, but we are not where we should be given our expectations, and I believe now is the best time for us to move in a different direction. Jeff Ulbrich will serve as our interim head coach for the remainder of the season. He is a tough coach who has the respect of the coaches and the players on this team. I believe he, along with the coaches on this staff, can get the most out of our talented team and attain the goals we established this offseason. Again, that was from owner Woody Johnson this morning, his official statement released from the New York Jets themselves. Jeff Ulbrich will take over. Not really much of a surprise there. We'll get into that here a little bit later on. I think it was probably either him or you can even make the case to Ron Middleton could have been another option. Nathaniel Hackett, no chance that was happening. That would have been a disaster. But I think Ron Middleton, Jeff Ulbrich, 2 very well-respected coaches on this staff, 2 guys that probably would have been the top 2 options. Ulbrich, of course, who actually coached the Senior Bowl, has gotten some possible looks at being a head coach, just what he's done here as the defensive coordinator dating back to 2021, of course, when he came in on Saleh's staff. So Ulbrich gets a really, really huge opportunity with trying to turn this thing around here as the New York Jets try and defeat Buffalo now in what feels like just crazy that there's even a game coming up this week. It's just never a dull moment with this team. But I got to talk about Robert Saleh. It's done. It's over. It's finally over. Look, great guy, great dude. You wish him nothing but the best, all of that stuff, but it had to be done. And as I said yesterday, you couldn't wait any longer. The lack of accountability, his team's not being ready to play early in games, all of that stuff, it just couldn't happen any longer. When you have a Hall of Fame quarterback in an all-in year, you cannot just continue to waste games, waste seasons because of bad coaching. And we saw the same mistakes with this team that we've seen for years now under Robert Saleh dating back to 2020. Look, this is how I view it. Robert Saleh should have been fired after last year. We said it. He should have been fired after last year. So we shouldn't even have gone to this point. So you want to sit there and say that the Jets did this wrong and they should have just fired him last year when we knew this was probably going to happen again? Whatever. But it had to be done. It's a results-driven business, and when you look at Robert Saleh's tenure, when you look back at his run here, he finished 20-36 in 56 games coach. That's a .351 winning percentage. We went through these numbers yesterday. Actually, luckily we did because I didn't have to write a whole lot of stuff down. It was basically just copying all this stuff into a new document because we basically talked about a lot of this stuff yesterday. But that .351 winning percentage is 183rd, is ranked 183rd out of 201 qualified coaches in NFL history with 50-plus games coached. So when you look at his winning percentage and you look at it amongst coaches with 50-plus games, a pretty large body of work, Robert Saleh is all the way near the bottom of that list as one of the worst coaches in that range of 50-plus games coached with a 20-36 record, 183rd out of 201 possible coaches. And I didn't want to make the comparison, but I'm going to do that here. When you look at Adam Gaze's career record of 80 games coached, definitely a larger sample size, but with the way it was going with Saleh anyway, he probably doesn't get to a 400 winning percentage because he couldn't win with a Hall of Fame quarterback anyway in these first 5 weeks. But Gaze was 32-48. That's a 400 winning percentage. There is a lot of terrible coaches that have better winning percentages than Robert Saleh. And at the end of the day, it's a results-driven business. And Robert Saleh, in his 56 games coached, his 3.5 years here, there was not enough results. There was not enough winning. And it was the same garbage week in and week out. And that's why a move had to be made. The team consistently not ready to play. How many times have we seen this team start slow under Robert Saleh? The accountability, lack of accountability, was alarming during his 3.5 years here. And that lack of accountability led to undisciplined football, stupid penalties, repeated mistakes, where clearly he wasn't making the necessary adjustments. I mean, do we want to even talk about his in-game management? He never having conversations with guys on the sideline. Was always just standing there with a blank stare in his face. No accountability, no energy. Only had energy when something good happened. Right? We hired Saleh, and look, I love the hire. I love the hire. I'm not going to sit here and tell you. I'm on record, by the way. You want to go back and look at the episode when Saleh got hired? Fine. I love the Robert Saleh hire because at the time we were getting rid of a dysfunctional piece of garbage and Gaze that was a disaster, as we know, 9-23 in his 2 years, the 2-14 debacle. And we were getting a guy with energy. We were getting a guy that we thought was going to be that CEO type coach that oversees everything, holds players accountable. Not that we thought we were getting Bill Parcells, but for the fans that witnessed Bill Parcells and his seasons here, that 98 team, of course, one of the best in Jets history, we thought we were going to get something like that in Robert Saleh, which this organization desperately needed. And when Robert Saleh, the minute he took over, he was in over his head. Great defensive coordinator, not a good head coach. In fact, he's a terrible, terrible head coach. No other way to draw it up. And that's where I know there's a portion of the fan base that's like, oh, he doesn't control the offense. He's got his hands on a top 5 defense. look, Robert Saleh, again, is not the defensive coordinator. He is the head coach of the New York Jets, or was the head coach now of the New York Jets. His focus can't only be on the defense. If that's the case, then just go back to being a defensive coordinator. That's why I don't get some fans today saying, oh, and I agree, they should make changes to the offensive staff. And maybe those are coming. You know, the Jets are going to do a couple things here. This is like the first wake-up call. And this is the first message being sent. If they lose to Buffalo, there might be a couple other messages that are sent, including with Nathaniel Hackett and Keith Carter and Todd Downing and all those guys. This is the first kind of shockwave message. Doesn't mean that this is the only move the Jets are going to make if they still get blown out on Monday night. But that's my point. Robert Saleh was brought in here to be a head coach, change the culture, and turn this thing around. And instead, what he did was built a culture of justifying losing, lack of accountability, not much urgency, and not enough wins. A losing culture, basically where he picked it up. Not good enough. He was not brought in here to be a defensive coordinator. He was brought in here to be a head coach, to hold guys accountable, to change the narrative that was around this team forever. And he didn't do it. And that's why he doesn't have a job. I understand top 5 defense. I get all that. But as a head coach, he was awful. Terrible. No other way to put it. And when you lose games like this consistently, Denver, Minnesota, starting slow, 17-0, right? And you continue to have these flat starts with all this talent on this team, something had to change, and it does. So Robert Saleh is out. And let me just give you more numbers. All right, we talk about the penalties. Robert Saleh now ends his Jet career. 357 penalties committed under Robert Saleh. That's for 3,023 yards. That's an average under Robert Saleh of 6.4 penalties per game for 53.9 yards. That is not good enough at all. Averaging upwards near 7 penalties a game for around 54 yards is terrible. That's inexcusable. So the undisciplined football was an alarming thing. And we've talked about, too, anytime Robert Saleh felt like had more time to prepare, his team struggled. His team started flat, right? He had 2-7 with extra time to prepare, only wins coming up against Giants and Patriots. This is, you know, when you look at sometimes after bye week, stuff like that. And when you look at his record after bye weeks, it's really, really bad. It's terrible. He was 3-9 in 2021 after the bye week. He was 1-7 in 2022 after the bye week. 6 straight. He was 4-7 last year after the bye week. That's a total of 8-23 after the team's bye week. Of course, those 6 straight losses, 2 in 2022. That's another thing, too, I think that needs to be brought up about Robert Saleh. You know, in 2022, this team was 7-4. They lost 6 straight. Last year, they were 4-3. They ended up finishing the season 7-10. They went 3-7 the rest of the way. There was always something, too, about Robert Saleh that for some reason, as the season went on, whether it was the team losing faith in him, whether it was just maybe the piss-poor quarterback play, whatever it was, in each of the last 2 seasons, not really 2021 because they just sucked all year, but specifically 2022 and 2023 where they were 7-4 and 4-3, they were right in the heart of it, his teams collapsed. Just no other way to put it. His teams collapsed. Saleh's teams, they start slow, and then they would kind of get here, and they would be back up. And then, right? Or they would here, and in here, and in here. That's what it was. It'd be like 3 sections of a season. Start slow, then start to rise, then fall. 2022 was a little different. It was more of, we're rolling, baby, 7-4, and then just tank. So, not good enough. 20-36. We were all wrong about this one. I haven't taken the moment really to kind of just sit and reflect, but he was not anywhere near the coach any of us expected, any of the coach that any of us wanted. When you look in terms of what we thought we were getting, This was a guy that was brought in to be a CEO type coach, oversee everything, hold players accountable, change this losing culture, bring that same energy we saw in San Francisco, and just none of it. And I think a lot of it was he was in over his head. He was overwhelmed. He tried to put on too much of a business-like attitude as a head coach. He wasn't himself, and a lot of that killed him. Great defensive coordinator. I'm sure Robert Saleh will be wearing a headset next year somewhere as a defensive coordinator. There is not a doubt in my mind. There's not a doubt in my mind that'll happen. But his days as a head coach are over, and they need it to be. And even he will tell you that as well, I'm sure. Because this is a guy that he realized the problems that he was having on offense. He realized this offseason, you know what? I need to get involved in the offense more. Because I think he realized too, man, I can't just keep focusing on the defense. I'm a head coach. Like I gotta, and that's why I don't understand the people saying, oh, the defense was great. Robert Saleh is not a defensive coordinator. He was the head coach. The penalties you see every week, the slow starts you see every week, the losing, that ultimately comes back to the head coach, whether you like it or not. And by no means is the coaching staff now soft, but this is a big reality check. And I also think, too, that Quincy Williams' comments after the game probably really hit with some individuals in the higher-ups for the New York Jets. In terms of some people, certain people got to start taking accountability, all that stuff. You heard the Rodgers comments with, I don't think it's the cadence. I think you just need to take accountability. You could start to see, little by little, the locker room start to kind of fall apart and stop believing in him. Now, on that note of Rodgers, because I should clear that up, Rodgers had no say in this. According to Peter Schrager and a couple other sources, this was not a Rodgers or Joe Douglas decision. In fact, there's been many reports that Aaron Rodgers and Robert Saleh's relationship was actually not a problem. As much of maybe on the outside, the pushing against New England, all of that stuff is maybe as much as maybe that seemed like a problem. The cadence quotes in the post game, it clearly wasn't a problem. Multiple reports have said that it wasn't. This was a Woody Johnson decision, period, end of sentence. And I have to give credit to Woody Johnson. This is a guy that doesn't fire coaches. Heck, he didn't fire Gaze after they had that brutal Thursday night loss against Denver and Brett Rippon during the COVID year to fall to 0-4. You could have made the case he should have fired Gaze when they went to 1-7 in his first season with the team. He should have fired Gaze after year one. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but you get the point. Woody Johnson is not a guy in his 25 years owning the team, is not a guy that ever made a change in the middle of the season. Heck, even after 1 year, this was typically a guy that was pretty patient with coaches. He was patient with Gaze. He was way too patient with Todd Bowles. And also probably a year or two patient with Robert Saleh. But he's gone. That's besides the point. So this was a Woody Johnson decision, not a Rodgers decision, not a Joe Douglas decision. There was also many reports that Joe Douglas was still, him and Saleh got along well. They had no problems. So it is what it is. Look, you want to look at this team and you could say, oh, they should be 4-1. And if they were 4-1 right now, it'd be great at Florham Park. Yeah, they could be 4-1, but they also could be 1-4 because Robert Saleh didn't have this team ready to play Tennessee. Robert Saleh is also very lucky that Will Levis sucks, or else Jeff Ulbricht's first coaching debut probably would have been against Minnesota. If they lost to Tennessee, they probably would have fired Saleh after that Denver game, because then you would have been 1-3 and reeling at that point, going into Minnesota where you couldn't afford to fall to 1-4. So Saleh's also very lucky. This is probably something that if Will Levis doesn't suck, Saleh probably is fired after that Denver game. And instead, we're probably breaking down Ulbricht's first game as a coach. So you could sit here and tell me all you want. Yeah, they could be 4-1. I agree, they could be, but they could also very easily be 1-4 right now. Instead, they're 2-3 and they have a shot at the division, and now it's Jeff Ulbricht's team to take over. And on that note, now as we kind of put the Robert Saleh era to bed and usher in a new era here, Jeff Ulbricht. Jeff Ulbricht will now take over. Like I said, and not too surprising when you look at just who was available. They were not going to bring in somebody from the outside. That was not happening. We could sit here all day. I don't want to talk about next season, to be honest. I'm hoping that maybe this sparks something. I hope that this is a move that gets this team heading in the right direction, and maybe this team could still make the playoffs. I think you look at now the possibility of a Super Bowl and all that stuff, kind of that's so far away right now. Like you just got to hope that maybe Ulbrich here can kind of muster something up here and bring some positive things to the team. And look, Ulbrich was obviously the best decision. You weren't going to bring in from outside. And like I said, I could sit here all day and talk about options for next year. I'm not going to do that. We're in week 6. I just mentally, I'm not going to. I do not want to sit here and talk about next season. I just can't do it. It's October 8th. I can't do the next year talk in October. So cross that bridge when we get there if this thing continues to crumble. But in terms of Ulbrich, it was probably going to be him or Middleton. Look, Ulbrich's come in here and taken what was he's come over here and he kind of the front office, Ulbrich himself, they kind of tore apart the defense in 2021. Was a terrible defense. They found the pieces that fit, pieces that don't fit. They implemented their scheme, implemented their vision. 2022, the defense was elite. 2023, the defense was in some areas even better. And this year, I think what's most impressive about this defense and what Jeff Ulbrich's been able to do is Jeff Ulbrich, this is probably the least talented defense that he's had, especially the least talented defensive line. You want to say the pieces are still there in the secondary. You want to say, of course, the linebackers are still there. Obviously, Sherwood's doing really good. I know Mosley's been out, but you still got Quincy Williams. Like, you want to say that maybe the secondary pieces are still there. Fine. When it comes to a defensive line perspective, this is by far the weakest unit he's ever had. And yet this team through 5 games is one of the best ranked defenses in football. And through 5 games from a defensive line perspective have, 18 sacks on the season, which ranked 4th in the NFL. So they have been one of the best defenses in football. And they've done it with significantly less talent than they've had in past years, right? You've got a star pass rusher holding out. Of course, you got rid of Huff. You don't have Quentin Jefferson. You don't have JFM. I mean, so many pieces lost. And instead, it's guys like Leonard Taylor that are stepping up. You've gotten Will McDonald, who's been huge this year. He's taking a massive year 2 jump. Right. So, and they're still finding ways. So, look, Ulbrich's a guy that's well respected. Everything you hear from reporters, and I don't think you have to hear that from reporters. I think you, just as a Jeff fan, you know this. He's well respected. He seems like a guy that's well respected. The players really like him. And I think for Ulbrich, you kind of look at this as a huge opportunity for him because it feels like this is kind of a tryout. If he turns this thing around and this team does go on and let's say, I don't know, under Ulbrich, they go 9-3 the rest of the way and they finish 11-6. Like, let's just say that, or heck, even just 8-4 and they get to 10 wins and they get to the playoffs and maybe win a playoff game. There's a really good chance Ulbrich's coming back next year. And the Jets just remove the interim tag and name him as the head coach. So it's a great opportunity for him. We'll see. I do think I hope that he has a read on the locker room, and I hope that, and not that I hope, he knows that he knows why Robert Saleh just got fired. Lack of accountability, team starting slow, the penalties. So while it's tough to implement your vision in 6 days before Buffalo, and while it's tough to come in and really implement your culture as a head coach during the season, you hope that Ulbrich can tweak some things where this team starts to clean up the penalties. They start to clean up the slow starts, and you start seeing a much more energized team, a team that is much more disciplined, a team that plays much more, just a more better quality brand of football. And there was obviously a disconnect there happening with the locker room and Saleh, and this is a guy that's loved. So you hope that the locker room can kind of buy back in again in a way, just trust him and go out there and play hard for him. Look, they're going to play very hard for him. They're going to play very hard for Ulbrich. That's going to happen. Whether or not Ulbrich's a good coach, you're going to see early in these next couple weeks, they're going to play very, very hard for him. That always happens. Anytime a team fires a head coach, and the week later, the game after, there is always, the team always rallies around the interim for at least a week. They always do. They always play hard. So we'll see. But great chance for Ulbrich here. We'll see. Look, I agree it's the right move. I'm not going to sit here, though, and tell you that Ulbrich's going to take this team to the Super Bowl now. No. But it's the best thing the Jets could have did from a hiring within process. Like they weren't going to go out and hire somebody from the outside. Like they weren't going to go. they weren't going to pull Rex Ryan. Enough of the Rex Ryan nonsense. Look, we all love Rex, right? We all love Rex. We get it, but enough people saying, "Oh, bring Rex Ryan here." No, that would be the equivalent, a little bit different. It actually would probably be like, you know what? Like bringing in Jeff Saturday from Indy, the Jeff Saturday being brought in by Indy, rather, that would be like the equivalent to the Jets hiring Damian Woody right now, right? Former offensive lineman for the team, currently on TV, bashing the team. That would be like the Jets hiring Damian Woody, sort of. Would be like the equivalent to the Jeff Saturday thing. But that's my point. You're not going to go hire Rex Ryan off of the television right now and bring him in here. No, you had to go within. So the Jets couldn't pull the Indianapolis Colts and hire somebody that's on TV, talking about the team on TV and say, hey, come over here and coach for us. That wasn't happening. Olberg's the right move. Whether or not it works, we'll see. And I think it's lights a fire under everybody. I really do. I think this to me is just the start. This to me is like Woody seeing, all right, we're going to fire the coach. Major, major shockwaves. And now it's, okay, we're going to fire. If things don't work out Monday night and the offense still looks like garbage and the team gets blown out, okay, Hackett, you're next. Or Keith Carter, you're next. Or, Woody took a different approach here. Woody could have taken the approach of firing Hackett or firing Keith Carter, not even firing Hackett, but maybe just saying removing the play calling duties from Hackett and giving him the, let's say, Todd Downing, and then sending a message to Saleh, using the offensive staff as a message to Saleh about like, hey, fire, lighting a fire under his rear end, saying changes are being made, slight changes. Here is your scapegoat. You have, now you're next. He kind of did it the opposite now, where it's like he fires Saleh. That's now a message to the rest of really the offensive staff of saying, all right, your coach is now gone. The guy that's been defending this staff, saying Keith Carter got better in the offseason, right? All that stuff. Now he's gone. Who's next? I'll attack it. Because if you still see the same offense and the same crap, then you really start to look directly at Hackett, Keith Carter. And by, like I said, I would fire Hackett right now. I'd fire Hackett today. They're not going to do it. That's already been reported. But I'd fire Hackett today. I'd do something. I'd fire Keith Carter. I'd fire somebody on the offensive staff today. But look, when the team loses, heads got to roll. And Saleh's head's rolling. He's gone. Saleh out. 3.5 years of frustration. The Robert Saleh experience was a wild one. It's not one I would want to do over again. That's for dang sure. You go 4-13, you go, the hope of 7-4, you collapse and lose 6 straight. Last year, you lose Rodgers, which sucked, but then you start to buy back in when they win 3 straight to beat Philly. You beat the Giants on a miracle. You go to 4-3, and then they collapsed. And then this year, you get to 2-1, and now you're slowly collapsing, and it's only October. So, yeah, not a tenure that we will look back on in 10 years and say, man, Robert Saleh, no. This will be a tenure as, I feel like his tenure will be known as just, certainly there was definitely maybe the unknown of what happens if Rodgers never got hurt, but I'm not going to go down that road. He needs to go. He's gone. He was a terrible, terrible head coach, and he's canned. So, Robert Saleh fired. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below. What are your thoughts on this move? What are your thoughts on Jeff Ulbrich taking over? I'll be honest, I don't know too many Jets fans that aren't in favor of this move. So if you are one of them that isn't in favor of this move, let me know why. Love chatting it up in the comments. Love hearing all your opinions. Vent down below, I should say, Jets fans. Because as much as you might be happy Saleh's fired, when you look at this from an outside perspective, it's a disaster. The fact that we're firing the coach 5 games into an all-in year with Aaron Rodgers. Like, that's a disaster. Not actually, just that is. The fact that we're here firing the coach, like, this is a train wreck right now. I agree with the move, but The fact that we're here is not good in the first place. You don't want to be firing your coach 5 games in. But here we are. Anyway, through the highs and the lows, never a dull moment. JETS, Jets. I'm sure we'll have another episode out. Devontae Adams still might get traded, so we might get a Devontae Adams trade very soon. We might get Saleh getting fired, Devontae Adams getting traded in the same day, which might blow up Jets Twitter, might blow every Jets fan up. But here we are. Jets football. We'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching.